Las Vegas Raiders, now that the draft is behind us, we like to go back and go through every single team, look at all the draft picks, and find out which teams and certain selections were absolutely phenomenal moves. And we got one Raiders pick, excuse me, that no one is talking about. It's sliding under the radar, and I think you Raiders fans, Raider Nation, will really love this. But first, I'm Nick, that is Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, talking about the Raiders draft. And look, it was a really good draft overall for Las Vegas, and we'll probably take a holistic view and evaluate the whole thing. But there's one pick in particular that not enough people are focusing on. We'll get into that right now. Let's go ahead and pull up this tweet right here to remind everyone of the selection. Then we'll go into the data on the other side. This is really exciting stuff. So the tweet is from the Raiders PR Twitter account. With the 99th pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Raiders select offensive tackle Charles Grant from William and Mary. When this pick was made at the time, a lot of people were like, who's Charles Grant and where's William and Mary? I tell you what, guys, this guy is a really good football player playing at the FCS, formerly D1AA level of football. He was a dominant force, was a starter starting with his freshman year, became an all-conference player by his junior year, was an All-American by his last year in college football. He was a consensus first-team All-American. So he absolutely dominated that level of FCS football. We got some interesting data here. We're going to go and pull up a chart, if you don't mind, comparing him with another FCS level offensive line prospect that went in the first round, number 18 overall, and that's Gray Zabel from North Dakota State. He went to the Seattle Seahawks. And when you look at their grades, according to PFF, you'll find something very interesting, is that you look at Grant and you look at Zabel, and their grades, their performance is nearly identical. If you look at their overall grade, you can see in all three sections here, Zabel's performance, his grades in blue, Grant is in red. You can see overall, Grant actually has a slight edge over Gray Zabel. In run blocking grade, Grant is actually better than Zabel, and in pass blocking grade, it's reversed. But in all three of these, very, very close in proximity performance between Charles Grant, again, a third round pick, late third round, number 99, and Zabel, a first round pick. What does this mean? It means that the Raiders got an incredible amount of value here. In fact, I'd argue one of the more underrated steals. And one of the ways you can look at value, we've done a really good job on that, setting this kind of thing up for you people to see visually. Let's go ahead and pull up our next chart here. I think this is really interesting stuff. So what you can see here in the single stack bar, just to explain this here, is the combined red and blue, both of them together. That is the draft value position, according to the famous Jimmy Johnson trade value chart of Gray Zabel's selection in the first round. So again, going back to the other chart, we saw that Zabel and Grant were roughly the same in terms of performance. You can see that little red section right there is the value of the 99 selection where the Raiders drafted Grant. So if you look at the entire chart here, the red is what the price essentially in terms of draft value the Raiders paid for Charles Grant. The red plus blue is Zabel. What does that mean? It means the blue is essentially the value the Raiders got for drafting Charles Grant because, again, looking at the chart we just showed, they're very similar in terms of performance. Now, we're not saying that Grant is better than Zabel. In fact, he may not even be exactly as good, but he's certainly very close. And when you see all this value here, this is the anatomy of a steal. This is very important. When people talk about draft steals, this is exactly what we're talking about here. That value is that blue. Look how much the blue is as a percentage of the entire chart, certainly compared to the red. The Raiders in red paid a very little for a whole lot of value. Phenomenal job here by the Raiders picking up what I think is one of the more underrated steals in this past draft. All right, Miles, I'm curious your thoughts on this. But first, Raider Nation, in the comment section below, give us your opinion on the selection of Charles Grant here now that you've seen the data. Do you love it as a third round selection? Give it an A plus. Kind of wait and see mode after all. He's an FCS guy. Give it a C. Or do you absolutely hate it for some reason and you give it an F? Give us your thoughts and a grade of the selection by the Raiders in the comment section below. But Mize, over to you now. What are your thoughts on this draft pick by the Raiders?
Yeah, Nick, I think you said it really beautifully there. This is the anatomy of a steal as far as Charles Grant has the potential, and we're talking potential here. We're talking a third rounder versus a first rounder. This is a guy in Charles Grant that I believe, just like you said, he has the potential to be first round talent. This guy comes from a small school. He's not necessarily a huge guy, 6'4", 300, but when you look at this, and it's something that we talk about on this channel all the time, his play on the field, his grades, his numbers are worthy of a first round grade. This is a guy who physically isn't necessarily a first round grade, program wise isn't necessarily gets the accolades of a first round grade, but play wise, he definitely has that first round grade. So you look getting him in the third round, definitely a steal. And you look at this guy, what he's done in his career. First 3 years, looking from 2022, 2024, in the mid 70s in 2022, mid 70s in 2023. Then he jumps up to that all important 91.2 overall, the absolutely elite category in his 2024 season. Did fantastic. Everyone knows PFF. It is so hard to get graded in the 90s in just a category, but to have your overall grade be in the 90s is absolutely fantastic for Charles Grant. And this is a guy you wonder, okay, is he just like a pass blocking phenom? Is he just a mauler in the run game? No, he's both. He had a 90.4 run blocking grade, absolute mauler, but then 88.1 pass blocking grade as well. He is great in the pass game. This is a guy that can add a lot of value to this Raiders team. The Raiders, they've got Geno Smith back there now. They need to have guys to protect him. Charles Grant definitely seems like a guy that can come out of the gate and be very, very effective for the Raiders once he gets playing time, as a guy I wouldn't be worried about because, as I said, his play on the field, you look at Charles Grant, play on the field has been good. His attributes, statistics, maybe not the best, maybe not huge, but he is absolutely great on the field. And when you look at his pros and cons through his PFF draft profile, I think that's where you see this is a guy. He's got great lateral quickness. You know, he's intensity when he gets across his defenders on reach blocks. He just really gets to the second level very fast. His wrestling background, which I personally like, gives him, they say, it's a finisher's mentality. So this all has the athletes of a guy playing with a chip on his shoulder, being aggressive, always ready to do extra work, getting to the second level, really just wants to run through people's faces, just get downfield and really make some big time plays. I love this pick for the Raiders. I like Charles Grant, and I think we're going to see this guy when he hits the field. He's going to impress a lot of people, and a lot of people are going to know once and for all now he's going to put William and Mary on the map. I might not know exactly where William Mary is. I know what it is. I know what college it is, being from a school that is in the FCS, but I think he's going to put it on the map, and I think the Las Vegas Raiders made a great pick here in Charles Grant.
And it also fits where the Raiders are in terms of their roster situation. So if you look at left tackle and left guard for the Raiders, you got, of course, Colton Miller and Dylan Parham, the way it currently sits up. Both those guys are going into the season 2025 on the last year of their current deals. You've got a guy here in Grant who basically the one knock, the one concern, the worst case scenario is that he takes a year to develop into a competent offensive lineman because he needs to get a little bit bigger and because he came from the small school background, and maybe he has to transition from tackle to guard. Well, if that has to happen, it's a win for the Raiders because the Raiders most likely will lose Miller, Parham, or both after the season. So again, the worst case for the Raiders here is that Grant has to sit for the season, put on a few pounds, learn the NFL game, get ready to play. So it's not a lost season, but he's not going to play very much in 2025. But that works out great because then if Parham has to walk, you slide in Grant. Or if Miller has to walk, you slide in Grant, right? This is exactly what good roster building is. This is what John Spytek does. This is what the Raiders have done this entire offseason. Solid, stable roster execution, right? The Raiders are going back to stability. We've covered that a lot this offseason. One of the things that unstable teams do is they don't look ahead. They react to only what's in front of them this season. The Raiders have a left side offensive line issue contractually next year. So what do the Raiders do? They get a draft steal of an offensive lineman who could play in that position, who can wait a year, right? Smart succession planning, right? This is what good organizations do. This is what good franchises do. We've talked about it this entire offseason. The Raiders, from every move they've made, they've given every indication they're going back to being a stable, consistent, really solid franchise, going back to winning consistent football games. They've got a lot of moves to make to get into that championship category. But if you can't go from being a 12-loss team, a double-digit loss team, whatever, all the way up to title overnight. It takes multiple steps, and the Raiders are doing a great job taking those steps. And I think the selection of Charles Grant is, again, one of those moves that, especially when you aggregate it together with everything else they've done, are an indicator that the Raiders are already taking those massive first steps.